just to give a brief introduction of how this diagram works. This black line here represents the people, and here we see is the wealth in the middle for the benefit of everybody. Here we see the wealth in tax havens, with benefit really only for a very few who have the control of it. In this system, you can see that wealth benefiting everybody, obviously it creates a much bigger world GDP, and things like debt I've put here, up in that one, down in that one, world poverty, etc. You can go through the whole list. And there are things I've messed off, so you can put them on, like inventions, beating pandemics, all sorts of things like that. Risk of world war, nuclear proliferation, global warming, and all of this, of course, this relies on the cooperation of the United Nations and the recognition of the promise to the troops and Holocaust victims 3 weeks after D-Day for stabilization of world currencies, all agreements to be ratified by the Allied and Associate Nations for the promotion of world trade as a foundation for a lasting peace. This system here lasted from 1945 to 71. 1919 to 1933, we had this system, approximately. 1971 to 29, this system has been growing from 1971 to 2019. There's a couple of quotes here, one from Churchill, one from Nixon, and I think that quote from Nixon is probably taken from Bretton and Churchill. You can see that the distance between rich and poor in this seems much greater. It is much greater, but because of the fact that they're making the world poorer, they are actually much less well off. Rather like an Egyptian pharaoh, it would be much worse off than the poorest of the poor in the system here today, with all the modern advantages of technology. Cryptocurrencies here. This couldn't exist. Cryptocurrencies could not exist in this system because cryptocurrencies can be gambled on, and unfortunately, so I've been told, they also promote almost through finance dreadful crimes against children. This is something that ordinary currencies cannot do because they're not encrypted on the dark web. This is absolutely dreadful crimes, and the trouble is you get the migration increasing because of currency attacks. Like, I put a currency attack here. This is an example of one, front page of the Financial Times 2016, 850 billion. Well, that is $850,000 for 1 million doctors and nurses in a day, or £850 for 1 billion doctors and nurses. That's about 1/7 of the world population in a day. I think this is the important thing, in a day. It is also the equivalent to the amount of money earned in tax, roughly, by the United Kingdom in a year, which is being earned in a day for a tax haven. And interesting enough, the man who does that tended to attack the currencies of nations due to problems within the nation. Unfortunately, it seems that we're moving into a situation now where attacks are being made on trouble between the nations, which of course is far more dangerous. Okay, well, I'd love some comments on it. I think we've got a little bit of time rest. We'll probably run out. I could do the Churchill voice. And we take these measures against speculators of any country, of any kind, and of any hue. Countries are like ships in a dock, tied together by trade, and if one falls, it can pull down the rest with it. Which is very stupid to say things like, oh yes, we can destroy the European Union. Well, this is very, very stupid. Much better off to have this system, stabilization of currencies. Because you must remember, this was to beat Nazism, this system, because the problems that emerged after the Wall Street crash, bonanza. Don't forget, some people make a lot of money out of the Wall Street crash, and the Great Depression happiness, as I call it, because we mustn't forget that people kept on speculating throughout the Great Depression, and there are ups and downs, it'll sort itself out in the end. The markets always recover because they don't. Because they have a 1933 Treaty of London, it was too late. Already Hitler has established himself in Germany, the Third Reich, with an electoral system, first past the post, well, actually there isn't a post, which is banned in Germany now, anti-Nazi Germany now, which David Cameron unfortunately described as like a horse race. The first one past the post wins. That is only true if you're thinking about a horse race where the post moves around. And I think we can see that. 80 MPs in Britain, but minus 2 million majority for Boris Johnson and his alliance with the Brexit Party. Because, of course, the Brexit Party stood down so that his MPs could get in. The other parties had 2 million more votes. Incidentally, that is exactly the same amount of extra votes that Hitler had in the 1933 election. I think you will find that it was 12 million Nazi, 8 million for the Christian Democrats, and 6 million for the Communists. There are many things written about how bad this system is of voting. Sorry to have got off the point, but this is all fairly self-explanatory, isn't it? You just look at all of that and decide which is better. And I think for many of you, it will be a shock to find out that some people in a hedge fund can earn 850,000 million in a day, and the guy actually doing it says it's really bad, causes lots of migration, causes poverty. Obviously, the poverty causes it. The press is blaming migrants who have actually been bankrupted by the currency attack for the problems. Then fascism comes in. Because, of course, it is righteous that people say, according to international law, if there's too many people in a lifeboat, or you can't let any more in. So there's nothing. But people don't realise that there is actually a completely different system, and that these people have actually been maybe bankrupted with their own money and your money. Because if you go to a bank and you ask them, can I have an account that doesn't trade on currencies, doesn't trade on derivatives, etc., I think they'll just say no. You'll have to go to a special bank in London because I've done it and I've closed my accounts, except for one, which I can't remember where it is, and I think it's only got £1 in it. However, I'm still guilty of it. Anyway, so it leads these floating systems to extremism, basically. Fascism, Stalinism, feudalism, extremism. And it must be remembered that every single troublesome event in the world is a possibility for these people to make a lot of money. And these are called international currency speculators. But do remember, please, of any country of any kind, of any hue, and Gamblers Anonymous would obviously say this is an illness. It's not a... and then maybe they're not even aware this system exists, and they feel they're being highly successful, and they're doing the right thing, and all that stuff. But in fact, it's not a good system. And this system is much better. Also, another thing, of course, is that it was promised to the troops and to the Holocaust victims. So we are making liars, out of Churchill, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower. The Kennedys, who would have probably almost, who as officers within the United States Navy would have been the representatives of the president and therefore promising this system. Same as the Duke of Westminster's grandfather, Duke of Norfolk's father, the Queen's father, George VI, and the Free Polish, the Free Czechoslovakian, de Gaulle and the Free French, etc., etc. And of course, I bet you anybody who's ever run a gambling organisation can find some very good methods of introducing this system. I mean, a cap system for the start. 20 trillion is the world's exports from every country to every country. But yet we have 6.6 trillion or 7 trillion, and going up, of course, in times of crisis, moving on the currency markets. And of course, in times of crisis, when there's attack on Wall Street, or the 12% recently knocked off the United States stock market, which is 44% of the world's stock market, worth between 50 to 90 trillion. So you've got to say there's got to be 2 to maybe 6 trillion there. Knocked off in a day before anybody had died in the United States. As bad as the 2008 worst day, to get back to it now, where does the money go? And it is obviously into that what is making a lot of money. And even the money from corporations, the